Welcome. Sun Lake's Dry Falls State Park in Washington State is probably our favorite state park. It's in the Grand Coulee where the Ice Age floods formed the coulee and basically formed these what's called dry falls, which is essentially a cliff that the gigantic waterfall used to go over. And so we wanted to brighten up the inside of our fifth wheel a little bit. So I decided to do a little design of the dry falls on Vectric Aspire software and cut them on the ShopBot CNC machine and make a panel for one of the cabinets in our fifth wheel. So that's what this video is about, and I hope you enjoy it. Well, I started out the design by making a workpiece, and that workpiece is large enough for the door, 14.5 wide, 24 high, plus a big rabbet around the edge and screws to hold it in. It's a single-sided job. I use a machine bed as my zero position. My work is going to be 1.25 inches or 1.125 inches thick, and so there we go. Now, first thing I did, go to modeling, and I imported a photograph. Okay, so I create a component from a selected or imported bitmap, and I had made something I called the Dry Falls negative, because I found the negative picks up the detail better, and there you go. It's in there, and if I go to the 3D view, it kind of already looks like the dry falls. Let me get that centered. Okay, so you can see the falls here, and you can see the land and so forth. There's a tumbleweed bush that's in the way there, sage, and the water and the sky. But there's not a lot of depth to this. There's some, but not a lot. You don't get the curvature of the falls. You know, it's concave here and concave here. You don't get that with this. So I needed to fix that. So this is a good starting point, but where we really need to go now is to making some vectors. And so I'll go back to the 2D view, and I know it's a little busy, but I've got vectors here that show the outline of where the rabbit has to be and the part that you actually see carved here. And I'll just kind of review some of the things I did. Let me see if I can make it so this shows up a little better. Okay, I will go like that. Okay, so I had to, move this image around a little bit to get it where I liked it to be, and none of this is really to scale right now. I'm kind of showing you what I did. The first thing I did was I made a, there we go. I made a vector that would be the concave shape of the dry falls. And using a 2-rail sweep, I was able to actually make a model that had the depth to it. And I'll just kind of show you what that looked like. Bounce around here a little bit, but if I go to the cliff base there, you can see that now it has a little concavity to it. So that was one of the first things I did. And then using sculpting techniques, I went ahead and made all the rest of the parts stand out some. Let's see, what am I missing there? I'm missing the bottom end. Okay, so I made the various parts stand out by using various sculpting techniques, and I was able to get to the point where we have the water and the sky and so forth. And this looks a little more like it really looks when you're there. And then I went ahead and made that all into a single file. And let me get rid of all these other essentially copied everything that I had into a single component here, and this is what I ended up carving. So I'm not going to really go through all the sculpting, but you know, to briefly tell you, you make the basic parts, and then you go and you add and subtract and smooth and so forth, do texturing types of things to get this to look like you want. These clouds are components that were in the file, clip art file. I just imported them just to give it a little bit of a you know, little something up here. You need a little something. Okay, and then I went over to the making the tool paths, and essentially I made a rabbet around the edge and the roughing tool path just to get away a lot of this material. And I used a 1/2 inch bit for that, a 1/2 inch end mill. And then I went into the finish tool path, which was going to start out with a 1/8 inch ball nose, and then I would use a 1/16 inch ball nose on just the cliff section here to bring out this detail, and finally a cutout. And now this little tool path here is just to make sure my screws weren't going to hit when I finally did all this. Okay, but the problem is this piece here is tall in this direction and not very wide. It's 24 inches tall, but the bed of my tool is only 18 inches deep. So the bed of my tool kind of looks like this. So what I had to do is I had to take all this after I built it and rotate it to the right 90 degrees. And to do that, I'm just going to skip over here to the file that is actually that file. All right, and there I am rotated to the right. I'll go to the 3D view. That's what it looked like. A little confusing. You can see why I didn't build it in this orientation. I would have never been able to do that. But now this is how I'm going to have to cut it. So all my tool paths, if I go ahead and show them all, you can see that they fit that area. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you how this all worked out. And I'll try to time lapse this a little bit because this could go kind of slowly. Well, let's see, what's our preview quality? I got maximum. Let me just go to high so it'll print very quickly for you. We'll go first to the rabbit. Boom, there you go. There's a rabbit with a 1/2 inch bit, and then the roughing tool path. Matter of fact, I'll animate it for you. Okay, so she's roughing out. I think this took 3 or 4 passes to finally rough out all the way. You can see how it's bringing out some of the detail of the land, and now you can see the actual falls themselves. Here's the water, here's the sky and the clouds. Okay, so she's all roughed out. Finally then the finishing tool path. Now this is going to go a little slower. It's an 1/8 inch bit. I'm using a 20-degree angle on here so that I don't rip out big splinters of the wood. Cherry's probably not going to do that too badly, but why take the chance? Especially with that 1/2 inch bit. That would really tend to rip out pieces of wood. Okay, so you can see there's some amount of detail here in the cliffs, but not really that great. So I really want to get a little better detail on that. And so that's why I used a 1/16 inch bit just on that part. And you can see here that it's a little bit more detailed now. And finally, just cut it all out. And you can see I've got some tabs to hold the work in so that this doesn't go crazy when it finally cuts all the way through. And now I'm ready just to break those tabs off, clean this up a little bit, and take it over to where I can, well, I'm eventually going to paint this, so that's where we're going to go. But I'm going to take this whole file over to the CNC machine and cut it, and then we'll show you how that goes, and then how I did a little bit of painting on here to bring all this out. I started out with 2.5 inch thick cherry plank. It was about 8 inches wide, and I sliced it in half and book matched it, and now I'm cutting the rabbet around the edge so it'll fit into the frame. I'm using the same 1/2 inch upcut bit to cut the first pass here on the roughing. So I'll rough out the whole design, and then I'll get into the finer with the 1/8 inch bit. And you can see here that 1/2 inch bit's starting to pick up some of the detail now of the carving. Now I'm into the ball nose, 1/8 inch ball nose carving, so I'm really getting the image now. And I'm cutting it with about a 20-degree angle on the raster so I don't chip out any of the cherry. And because it's just making fine dust, I'm not using the dust boot and vacuum, just to save a little bit of electricity and a little bit of noise on my ears. At this point, the entire design has been carved with the 1/8 inch ball nose, and now I'm going in for the very fine detail on the actual falls part, the cliff part of the dry falls, just so I can really bring out what I'm really trying to do is bring out the divisions between the layers of basalt on the actual cliffs. To do this, I'm using a 1/16 inch ball nose bit. And here's the finished carving. I put a couple of coats of spray lacquer on there, but I'm not real happy that I've really brought out the detail of the scene, so I may be doing a little painting here. I've mixed up a little bit of color with a glazing medium. It's acrylic, and what I'm going to do is I'm trying to bring out the blue of the sky, the white of the clouds, the brownish gray of the land, and so forth, and see if I can just intensify this a little bit. Well, I got a little carried away with the glazing, and I really wanted to bring things out, so this is the finished piece, and you can see how the sky meets the land and the various layers of the basalt. You can also see well on here the rabbeted edge that's going to fit into the frame. The next job is to bring the frame back together. I had actually sliced off part of the frame with my table saw, so now I have to make some domino tenons or mortises here for domino tenons to fit into and when I reassemble the frame. A little bit of glue on a brush into those mortises. And then a little glue onto the dominoes. Brush that on all around. And finally just tap the dominoes into place. And after assembling the frame, I went ahead and hung it back onto the door, and this is what it looks like actually in the trailer. And you can see opening the door is nice too, because you can see that book-matched cherry as compared with the original. Thanks for watching as we recreated our favorite campground in our fifth wheel.